will be talking to you about our scheme itself, so the rules and objectives of the postdoctoral fellowships. Then I will give you information about how to submit a proposal and spend some time on our evaluation process. Then I will also provide you with some statistics on Belgium. And at the end, there will be plenty of time for Q&A. First of all, then, where do we place the MSCA in Horizon Europe? So Horizon Europe is our framework program that runs from 2021 to 2027, and it has about 6.6 billion euros of budget for all those years combined. And as you can see on this slide, there are three pillars: excellent science, global challenges, and innovative Europe. Now, the Marie Sklodowska reactions, we are firmly planted in pillar one, excellent science. And you'll hear me use the words excellent quite a lot in my presentation because it is the focus of our program. Zooming in, we see that there are 5 actions in the MSCA: doctoral networks, staff exchanges, co-fund, and MSCA and citizens. And of course, the postdoctoral fellowships that offer support to excellent postdoctoral researchers. And that is, after all, why you are here today. The budget, indicative budget for this year, is about 400 million euros. This is divided into 2 sections. European takes the majority of that funding, and global fellowships takes about 60 million euros. That distinction is very important to keep in mind because when you apply to the call, you can only choose one of these implementation modes. And in the next slide, I will come back to that difference between them. As already mentioned, the call has opened on April 9th. And the call deadline is September 9th at 5 p.m. Brussels time. If you consider applying to our call, keep that date firmly in mind because it is a very fixed date. At 9 September 2026, 5 p.m., the call closes irrevocably. So basically, don't be late to that. Now, this next part, I will read for you out loud. This is the official definition. So it says, MSCA postdoctoral fellowships aim to enhance the creative and innovative potential of researchers with a PhD who want to acquire new skills through advanced training, as well as international, interdisciplinary, and intersectoral mobility. And my goal here today is to translate that into something a bit more concrete for you. First, though, as promised, that distinction, that very important distinction between European and global fellowships. So European fellowships are the bulk of our implementation mode. Most researchers undertake that kind of fellowship. And it means that you will come in from any member state, associated country, or third country, anywhere in the world, basically, to do research in Europe. Global fellowships, on the other hand, as you can see, have a bit more of a complex setup. So it means a researcher will leave Europe for an outgoing phase to a third country, spend part of the project there doing research, and then comes back for a mandatory return phase to Europe. Those projects last longer, as you can imagine, but are also a bit more complex. So when you decide to apply, make sure that you apply for the correct implementation mode. You can't change it once you've started. Both of these can have attached to them a so-called non-academic placement at the very end, where you will spend some additional time in the private sector, and that can be up to 6 months. Now, objectives. You can see here a list of objectives, and they are divided into 2 main groups, if you will, a part for the researcher and a part for organizations. So focusing first on researchers, what do we want to see from our fellowships is, first of all, an increased set of research and transferable skills that should lead to a better employability and better career prospects inside academia, but also in the private sector. We also want to forge new mindsets and approaches to R&I work through that international, intersectoral, and interdisciplinary experience. And of course, we want to enhance networking and communication skills, not just with the scientific community, but also with the general public, who after all have to know about and support the research that you're doing. That's for the researchers. When we look at organizations, we would like to see an increased alignment of working conditions, an increased global attractiveness, visibility, and reputation of all the participating organizations, a stronger R&I capacity, and what is relatively new is a more regular feedback of the research results into teaching and education at the participating organizations so that the next generation can also be already pre-involved, if you will. Now, conditions for participating in a postdoctoral fellowship or submitting an application. There is always one single independent organization in a member state or associated country that will be the main beneficiary. Other organizations can be added, but the main organization is always one single participating organization. More important though, for you as researchers, what do we expect to see there is that, first of all, you would be in possession of a PhD at the call deadline or have already had a successful and unconditional viva prior to that same date. So you remember that is the 9th of September. Related to that is that we want to see researchers who only have up to 8 years of research experience after that PhD. So they're very early to say in that career. There are, of course, exceptions that can be applied to that period of 8 years to extend it a bit further. For instance, career breaks, work outside of research, parental leave, things like that. If you consider applying for a European fellowship, you can be of any nationality. But if you want to apply for a global fellowship, we do want you to be a national or a long-term resident of a member state or associated country. And a fourth very important aspect is the mobility rule. That's why I've also underlined it. Because it's a mobility scheme, we want the researchers to not have resided or have had main activity in Belgium for more than 12 months in the last 3 years before call deadline. Next up, duration. So as I indicated before, European and global fellowships have a different setup. So the duration for European fellowships is anywhere between 12 and 24 months. That is entirely free for you to choose. Global fellowships have also a 12 to 24 month period first, so-called outgoing phase. Again, free for you to choose. And that is always followed by a mandatory 12-month return phase in Europe. That duration cannot be modified. That is always 12 months. Next, there are 2 optional things that you could add on to your proposal. That is secondments and non-academic placements that I've mentioned before in an earlier slide. Now, a secondment is a type of temporary physical mobility where the researcher would go to another organization to do part of the research or maybe get some very specific training that might not be available at the main host. So it's typically rather short, and you can see that these can be done worldwide. So you can go anywhere in the world for that, in any sector, academic, non-academic, and we allow up to half of the total duration for secondment or secondments plural. That is a change compared to last year, where we allowed up to 1/3. So we're giving a bit more time for doing secondments like this. Another optional feature is this non-academic placement. This can only be done in a member state or associated country, can only be 1 to 6 months long, and always happens at the very end of the fellowship. So after our standard duration of 12 to 24 or 24 to 36 months. And if you consider adding a non-academic placement, this has to be already a full part of your proposal and will be evaluated as such. Training activities I will skip for now. You can read that though in the slides when they're made available. It's just that we want any training activities to be, more transferable and common to all fields and include aspects like good scientific conduct and open science. More important though is resubmissions. So a resubmission for us is a proposal that has the same recruiting organization and the same researcher. For global fellowships, also the same associated partner that hosts the outgoing phase. And the restriction is that if this proposal was submitted in 2025 but scored less than 80%, it can unfortunately not be resubmitted in the 2026 call. It will be made ineligible if that's the case. This is a change compared to last year, where the threshold was 75%. Also, really important, of course, to know is the budget. You see from this slide that it's divided in two parts. A part that is for the host organization, that is 1,650 euros per month always, and a part that is for the researcher, aka that would be your salary. The amounts that you see here are per person month. First, it's a part called the living allowance, which is 6,350 euros per month. Now, be aware that this is a gross amount, so there will be deductions for social security, taxes, and all those things. There is also a mobility allowance given to everyone of 710 euros per month, and for those who qualify, a family allowance of 660 euros per month. The family allowance can be claimed at any time, also after a grant would maybe be awarded. You can read more about that in our work program. And that concludes the official part of what the postdoctoral fellowships are about. And now I will talk a bit about submitting a proposal and the evaluation process. First of all our submissions happen electronically through the Funding and Tenders portal. And when you find the call, it will ask you to complete a Part A, application forms with standard information, and provide a Part B, a technical description. I'll give more details on both those in the next few slides. But before I get there, it's very important that you use the correct and the current proposal template for the call. If you use a template from another action or a previous call year, this might affect the evaluation of your proposal, because on occasion, very rarely, we do change things. So the safest way to prepare your proposal is to go through our call page and find that proposal template on our current call page. You will easily recognize it. If you look on the site, there will be a date. Look for 2026, of course. So first of all, in the Part A, the application forms, this is an online form that you will fill out. It will first ask you for some general information, like the acronym, the title for the project, also the scientific area that best fits your own proposal. And very important, we ask for up to 5 so-called MSCA descriptors. Those are keywords that will best characterize the content of your proposal. The first 3 are mandatory, and the last 2 are optional. We do recommend, of course, that you put them, because the more keywords you provide, the easier it is for us to assign experts later on. If you find that these fixed keywords are not fully describing your proposal, there is an option to put also free keywords. If you put them, we will use them. And then, of course, like in any scientific grant proposal or publication, we like you to provide an abstract about what your proposal is about, and also linked to what I mentioned earlier, information on potential resubmission. Next up, you will be asked to provide some information about the beneficiary, the intended host organization. In any cases, you will have to fill out the participant information code of the main beneficiary. Best is here to ask that number to the grants office of your intended beneficiary. They have it on record, and it's a single correct number. You will also need to fill out that number if you are applying for a global fellowship for the outgoing host, and if you're intending for this to happen, also for the non-academic placement host. For secondments, this is not necessary. Then you do not have to add the PIC number. You just outline it in the Part B. Next up, a section on yourself as researcher with some personal details, your name, your birth date, the PhD award date, very critical. And if your PhD was awarded more than 8 years ago, also information on possible extensions to that period. And for us to be able to check the mobility rule is complied with, we also ask countries of residence and activity for the past 5 years. Next, you will be asked to fill out a budget table where you will need to fill out the project duration, complete information on the host countries, and of course indicate whether or not a family allowance applies to you. Then there is also a section with other data like supervisor information, publications, ethics and security. This is a self-assessment, by the way, and guidance will be available online, and some other questions related to eligibility, communication, and disclosure of results. And once you have completed your Part A application forms, you can work on uploading your Part B. This is a PDF, and this is the core of the proposal that the expert evaluators will look at. It consists of two documents, a Part B1 and a Part B2. They are uploaded separately, and you have to ensure that the correct document is uploaded in the correct space. Why? Because the Part B1, which is the technical description of your scientific work, has a very strict limit of 10 pages. Any excess pages will not be visible to the evaluator. So if you upload a document with 11 pages, that 11th page sadly goes blank. Linked to this, we also set a minimum font size of 11 points for body text and table text with standard spacing so that our expert evaluators can properly read and assess your proposal. To make things easy, we have provided a Part B template on our call page so that you can structure your proposal accordingly. The Part B2 has no formal page limit, but we do request that the recommendations of the template are followed. It contains, amongst other things, the CV of the researcher, a table and information on the capacity of the participating organizations, a letter of commitment for global fellowships only from the future outgoing host organization, and some other information on, for instance, ethics. Again, the Part B template has all the information on the Part B1 and the Part B2, including what goes where exactly and how long it can be. So make sure to refer to that document found on our call page. This is also very interesting to look at, is the common errors that we see on the REA side. First of all, it does happen that people miss the call deadline. So you remember that is September 9th. It's a fixed date. So unfortunately, if you miss the call deadline, there is nothing we can do. Also happens quite often that people submit under the wrong type of action. So European fellowships versus global fellowships have a very different setup and set of expectations. So make sure to get that right as well. Eligibility requirements not being respected also sadly leads to a proposal not being evaluated. And two things that are very have a very heavy impact, I would say, on the evaluation of a proposal is if it exceeds the page limit or if it uses a smaller than allowed font. So do try to avoid those common errors to give your proposal the best chance of succeeding. Now, a few words on our evaluation process. This is a bottom-up program, which means that we accept proposals and use experts from any and all disciplines. And what are those disciplines, you might ask? Well, they're right there. Chemistry, economic sciences, engineering, environmental science, life science, mathematics, physics, and social science and humanities. So we accept anything in any of those domains. And to make sure that your proposal is evaluated in the best possible way, we make sure that we have a good expert balance, not only in those 8 scientific panels, but also in terms of experience, nationality, gender, age, and sector. As you can imagine, we run a large-scale evaluation because we have a large number of proposals. Last year was 17,000. But despite that, we do offer a standard peer review, which means that at least 3 experts will look at your proposal. Nevertheless, sometimes more, up to 5. And important also to know is that this is a single-stage evaluation. We evaluate the documents and only the documents that you've submitted by September 9th. Now, what happens after you have submitted your proposal to our call? You will remember that you were asked to provide keywords. So we assign, first of all, a set of experts to your proposal based on the keywords that you've provided, but also on the abstract, to find good experts to read your proposal. And as I indicated already, there are minimum 3 and maximum 5 for some complex cases. Each of the assigned experts will then write an individual evaluation report. Once that phase is completed, these experts that were involved will meet, bring their individual evaluation reports to that meeting and discuss all the aspects. They will reach consensus and write up a consensus report. We gather all the consensus reports, which also contains your score, then rank the proposals, and in February 2027, you will receive your result and a funding decision from our side. Now, what do we look at and what do we ask you to write about in your proposal are the evaluation and award criteria. There are 3 main groups: excellence, impact, and implementation. Excellence, because we fall under the excellence pillar, counts for 50% of your total score. And it looks at items such as your project's research objectives, the methodology that you've proposed and how well it integrates specific aspects, but also quality of supervision, training, and transfer of knowledge. And last but not least, also the quality and appropriateness of the existing professional experience of you as a researcher. The second category is impact, counting for 30% of the score. And this looks at, for instance, the credibility of the measures to enhance the career aspects and employability, but also on quality of dissemination and exploitation activities and expected scientific, societal, or economic impacts, knowing that not all projects can have all 3. Sometimes it is just not applicable. The last section, implementation, looks at the more practical aspects, such as effectiveness of the work plan, risk assessment, and quality and capacity of host organizations. And that accounts for 20% of the score. You will be asked to write about all these things in your proposal, and experts will evaluate it in the same way. So hitting those targets is important. One more word about call planning. So a call deadline, I've said it several times, I will say it once more, is the 9th of September 2026. We then evaluate the proposals over the next few months. Because we receive so many, it does take us a while. And in February 2027, the outcome will be made available to you. If granted, then you can start your project anywhere between March and April 2027 to September 2028. Because this is all quite a lot to take in, I've prepared a slide with resources and guidance. Your starting point should be the Funding and Tenders Portal call page. Why? Because that page has all the relevant information, the application forms, the deadlines, guidance material, FAQs even, and I do recommend that you start your reading with the guide for applicants. For those concerned, we also have a self-assessment tool to let you decide whether you can apply or not if your PhD was more than 8 years ago. Additional information you can find in the work program, the MSCA website, specifically the postdoctoral fellowships section. I also linked here the standard application and evaluation forms and some briefing and guidance that we give to our experts. Contact, you can do the Research Inquiry Service, the national contact points, and as presented early on in this morning, also the specific contacts at the various universities. Now, as promised, also a few words on Belgium. As you can see here, Belgium has always been very well represented throughout the postdoctoral fellowships over the years and has generally had a nice success rate as well. Even last year with the very high competition, they still did better than average. So this is a nice environment to be part of. This slide here shows you some information on collaborations and configurations. So although the fellowship would be having a Belgian host organization, that does not preclude any participation in other parts of the world. And on the map, you can see a combination of third country hosts for global fellowships, most notably the US and Canada, but also I see Brazil and Australia are nicely represented. And of course, also secondments and NAPs, which are elements that can certainly enrich your proposal and allow this kind of international collaboration if well justified. And from the left graph, the configuration graph, you see that there is also not one single correct or preferred setup. We fund projects that have the standard configuration, just as well as projects that have additional NAPs and or secondments in them. On this slide, you can see the share of main list projects with non-academic placements, NAPs. So although it's still a relatively small portion of projects that have a NAP, it is rather consistent. But it also leaves you some room to expand in. If you're interested in doing a NAP, it's definitely an option that is worth exploring. This slide shows you the origin of researchers that come to Belgium to take up a grant over the past Horizon years. And here too, you can see that this is a very global situation. We have member states, we have associated countries, and we have third countries, showing that Belgium is very well integrated in the international research landscape. And the final slide that I would like to show you is the distribution of the scientific areas. On the right, you see the breakdown for the call as a whole. And on the left, you see the situation for Belgium. So you can see very clear that social sciences and humanities and the life sciences are among the largest areas that are represented, but that all 8 scientific areas are very clearly shown in Belgium. Nevertheless, there is always room to expand and to bring additional knowledge and skills to Belgium, preferably, if you could, through a postdoctoral fellowship. I think that is the end of my presentation.